Welcome into Bucs Insider, coming to you from the Bucs studio, presented by Ticketmaster. Casey Phillips here with Scott Smith and Bree Dix, and the Bucs are rolling. We have 4 wins in a row and rolling in the awards, which we love for our guys. We got Baker Mayfield, Offensive Player of the Week. We got Mike Evans, FedEx Player of the Week. Both very deserving. Love to see them get some shout-outs and some credit. But Bree, we were talking about the fact that doesn't mean they always get the most credit from the team.
Yeah, I love that Todd Bowles said they clap and move on. He said we have a lot of sarcastic coaches that provide some shameless banter for our guys, keeping them grounded.
Keep them in check. That no one's head is getting too big thanks to all these sarcastic coaches. But we are so excited these guys are getting the awards, getting the notoriety that we know they deserve. But unfortunately, of course, still even with great games and great play, someone who doesn't get the national notoriety, I'm gonna keep banging on the table here. Lavonte David, of course, but what a game by him.
We were kind of hoping for a Player of the Week sweep with Lavonte and then Chase McLaughlin with the 4 field goals and the 4. Yeah. I don't think the NFL does that, though. I don't think I've ever seen one team sweep the whole thing. But this was a vintage Lavonte David game, and everybody who's watching knows exactly what I'm talking about. And if for some reason in my head it seems like they always occur in road games, like I feel like they happen in Atlanta a lot, where he's just all over the field. And think about this, Lavonte David is clearly the heart and soul of this defense and has been for a long time and still is in his 13th season. Think about all the guys going down around him in the back 7. KJ Britt, JJ Russell is out for a while. All the safeties, 3 safeties out. And so the Buccaneers are using all these different packages. I mean, you saw Ryan Neal playing off-ball linebacker next to him. We've seen Anthony Nelson playing next to him. We've seen him as the only linebacker on the field. But the one constant in all of this is Lavonte David. And in this game, he had 12 tackles, a lot of them very impactful plays. He had 1.5 sacks, and he had 3 quarterback hits, and one of those quarterback hits contributed to the ball kind of fluttering on Jamel Dean's interception. So he was all over the place. In the process, on the season, went over 100 tackles for the 11th time in his 13th season, and he tied David Logan with 39 career sacks in Buccaneers history for 6th place. You don't think of Lavonte David as one of the Bucs' all-time pass rushers, but when it comes down to it in the end, he really is. He's all of that together. And you said nobody in the national media is saying anything. I did, for the first time last week, catch somebody on one of these national panel shows call him future Hall of Famer Lavonte David.
Oh, love it.
So maybe we can
say it more.
Gain some steam with that.
Say it louder for the people.
Stand out with some protest signs.
I also think that he has the most sacks he's had since 2016 in a single season, which, again, for the age and the position and what he's doing, like, that is wild to have more sacks than you've had since 2016.
I think a big reason for that is he had the 5 years there with Devin White. And Devin White, as we all know, was a great blitzer. And so if you were going to send one of your 2 linebackers, you sent him. And so Lavonte wasn't getting a lot of time. But now Devin's gone, and the team's like, well, we need somebody to blitz. It's okay, hey, here's Lavonte. He's fantastic at it.
That's amazing. And then, Mike Evans, another guy that got one of those awards. I just feel like I keep thinking we've seen all the things to shock us or impress us or whatever about Mike Evans, and then he just has another game that blows your mind, and he officially moved into the top 25 all time in receiving yards for the NFL, which I love, and of course finished with 159 yards, including his longest reception of the season, 2 touchdowns. He's 1 touchdown away from his 6th season with at least double-digit touchdowns. And you know what I love is now that 1,000-yard season feels possible again. That for a little bit there, when we were looking at those numbers, we were like, ooh, and we should have known better. We should have known that it is never out of reach for Mike Evans. And so because he went off for this crazy amount a couple times now recently, he only needs to average 84 yards a game the last 3 games, which, I mean, look, that's a lot still. But the way he's been having these games of going off for 120, almost 160, if you have 1 more of those, then it becomes a lot more feasible. But 84 a game is what he needs. I think it's just really cool that we still get a chance to try to watch for this and see. And then also, I just wanted to shout out him playing defensive back for 1 play, essentially. Also, look at the t-shirt.
As Todd said, if he had a thinner t-shirt on, he'd have about 40 more yards.
He's got to ask Bucky about his t-shirts.
Exactly. Like, hey, Bucky's always rip away.
Where do you buy the tear-away t-shirts, and where can I get one of those? Mike also kind of helped when it looked like maybe there was a chance at an interception, knock the ball away. I just think Mike does a lot of things like that, too, where not only does he just make incredible plays that we see and appreciate, but he does some of the dirty work, the behind-the-scenes things that we don't always appreciate as well. Blocking downfield, doing a lot of the stuff that, frankly, a lot of other star wide receivers are just going to be like,
It's not my job.
Not my job anymore. And Mike is not that guy. So I thought it was just really cool to see. Again, we're all rooting for that 1,000-yard season again. So now we have that to keep a track of. But then, as we've talked about, ye old men on the team here, Lavonte and Mike, we also have some young guys that have been balling out recently.
Bucky Irving and Jalen McMillan had a great game. Bucky Irving had 117 yards against the Chargers. And on the 54-yard run, which was the longest run given up by the Chargers this season, it was a counter run, which has kind of been Bucky's bread and butter. You had Ben Bredesen, Keith pulling. Ben Bredesen took out Joey Bosa, and then Keith came in, delivered a block on Henley, and then Bucky Irving quickly hit the crease and accelerated. But I think he's just so fun to watch, and as we've talked about, I can't even count how many times defender's just grasping for anything, grasping the jersey, and he still manages to break away. But just, he's not the biggest back, but even like the contact balance, the leg drive, kind of the quickness, he's so slippery. And then Jalen McMillan had a touchdown, kind of capped off that 70-yard drive to open up the game, had the 26-yard touchdown on the rub route. And I think you're just seeing not only his familiarity with Baker Mayfield, but also just kind of coming into his own as a route runner and what he's been able to do, and just kind of the stop-start capability that he has, and has really emerged as kind of that number 2 weapon behind Mike Evans with Chris Godwin out. So exciting to see the impact that they've had, and just kind of a testament to the job that our front office does and the people that they draft.
Absolutely.
What I think is an interesting point that Coach made this week is that, the Buccaneers are 20-5 in December and January games since 2020, and it's been pretty much every season. They've turned it on at the end, and he made a point that we've been relying a lot in some of these seasons on young players and draft picks and undrafted guys and second-year guys, and they tend to get better if they're good players. They tend to get better as the season goes on, and Jalen McMillan's a great example of that. Like you said, now the Buccaneers are coming into a game. They don't, since Chris Godwin went down, it took a while, but now we have a clear number 2 option that makes it easier. They can't just roll all the coverage to Mike.
Yeah, I talked to Jalen McMillan yesterday briefly for a radio interview, and he talked about how he just feels so much more comfortable, so much more confident, that he was like, the lights were kind of bright early in the year, which is very understandable. And he was like, and then there was a little bit of trying to do too much maybe when Mike and Chris go down, and now he's like, I know my job, I know my role, I feel confident, I feel comfortable, got that chemistry with Baker, and I could just sense that he's like, I know what I'm doing, I belong in this league, I belong in this role, and it's very cool to see. So now injuries to watch. We know last week we talked about how we had the giant list of basically it felt like almost half the team on the injury report.
21 players.
So is it going to be better this week? What are we looking at?
Well, Baker Mayfield and Kate Otten are dealing with injuries.
Not better.
Yes, they didn't practice yesterday, so we'll see kind of what progress they're able to make. Maybe a situation where they're kind of limited in the rev up to the game on Sunday. Todd Bowles did say that Mike Edwards has a chance that he can come back to play against the Cowboys, so we'll be watching him. And then obviously, Bucky Irving, Tristan Wirfs have played with injuries, and I love that Todd Bowles said that Tristan Wirfs almost plays better injured, which I thought was really interesting. But he made the great point of he has to be so dialed in and focused with the injuries and kind of figuring out the technique and all the different things in dealing with that. And he's just been the elite Pro Bowler
So we're just going to kick him in the shin
on
Friday, right?
Yep, that's the plan. We're just going to alternate. We'll call each other. All right, I'm going to kick him on the left shin. You kick him on the right shin.
Who's Jeff Galooly this week?
Yeah.
So now also let's get into our trivia question. What do we have here?
Okay. The defending champion Buccaneers won a classic kickoff game to start the NFL's 2021 season 31-29 over the Dallas Cowboys. Who did Tom Brady hit for a 24-yard gain to get the Bucs in position for Ryan Succop's game-winning 36-yard field goal?
No complaining this week. This is your era.
This is my era.
This isn't like a Rondé Barber or Derek Brooks question. So, put it out there for you.
See, and then now this is
you
what
were
I
at
hate,
that game.
I was present.
You might have been watching the game covering the Cowboys.
Probably was.
We'll see.
You probably didn't like the outcome that day, but
yeah.
Yeah.
I was on,
and then you came over to the good side, so we're all good.
I was on enemy lines at that point.
That's funny. Well, I know earlier we talked a little bit about in terms of our milestone tracker we always do. I mentioned the whole Mike Evans 1,000-yard part. So are there any others that we're keeping an eye on this week?
Yeah, well, the one that just happened was Baker got over 30. He went all the way to 32, right? 32 touchdown passes. He had 4 in that game. He joins Tom Brady and Jameis Winston as the only quarterbacks in team history with 30 touchdown seasons, and one more will tie Jameis Winston for the third most. You know, Brady had the 43 and the 40 touchdown seasons, but it's a career high for him. He still ranks third in the league in that category. And then also you have, Bucky Irving, I think he's up to 852 rushing yards now. He's already over 1,000 yards from scrimmage, but he could get to 1,000 rushing yards. In fact, at 852, that means 148 over 3 games. Seems quite likely. I mean, it could happen this week. And he would be the first Buccaneers rusher to get a 1,000-yard season since Doug Martin in 2015. Rashad White missed by 10 yards last year, but he didn't get there. And then the first rookie for the Buccaneers to do so since Doug Martin in 2012.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
It's a good 4th-round pick.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, I think that he just the fact that he is a potential candidate for a Rookie of the Year, that people are talking about that, and you got him in the fourth round.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Well, and I forgot to mention at the beginning, but shameless plug for Scott Smith's incredible stats, but his yards after missed tackles are third in the league behind only Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley.
Who are pretty good.
I think I've heard
Not
of those
too
two.
shabby.
Yeah.
And they have a lot more opportunities than
Right.
Bucky overall, more carries.
Yeah.
498 yards after making somebody miss a tackle.
That's wild.
Yeah.
That would be enough for like a running back to be happy if that was all their yards.
Right.
Yeah, but those are just his after.
Yeah, just the after.
Well, out of 852, that means most of them.
More than half are coming after.
Which
he's
means
been hit.
he leads the league in a missed tackle rate of 36.8%, which is the highest that they've tracked. Next Gen Stats has tracked since 2018. If he did not have that ability, we'd be talking about a guy with 300 or 400 yards right now.
That's very true. That's interesting. All right, well, Fantasy Watch, I know it is at the crunch time of the fantasy season, the playoffs, and there's maybe some desperate people out there. My husband might be one of them.
Yes.
That I have heard
told me.
that he's gotten that he was leading his league, got the first round bye, was so excited, and then he had David Montgomery, womp womp. So then he was like, what am I going to do? And so maybe
who did he pick up?
What would you suggest he do?
Well, we talked about it last week. Is Jalen McMillan worth a pickup? And you don't normally find a guy on the waiver wire at this point in the season, they've already been scooped up by now, that could be a legitimate number 2 and produce for you pretty weekly. And we talked about last week, should you pick up Jalen McMillan? And my advice was, at this point in the season, you probably have a spot or 2 on your bench that you don't need. You might have been carrying 2 defenses and you don't need that. Or even a second quarterback, which you don't need anymore because there's only a couple weeks left and all the buys are done. So you probably have a spot that you could do. So why not try Jalen McMillan? Pick him up. Don't necessarily throw him right in the starting lineup, but pick him up.
Yeah.
And then
one of those flex spots.
Leon did. And
that was what he did.
And you could do that. You could probably still do that in a lot of your leagues. And he's just a guy that if you don't have another good option, I mean, it seems like he's starting to produce on a weekly basis now.
Yeah.
And then also, I've said this before, but if you're streaming kickers, this seems like it would be a good week to pick up Chase McLaughlin. I mean, he had 16 points in the Chargers game, and he's going to be kicking in a dome this week. And the Buccaneers offense is producing so steadily against a Dallas defense that's, giving up a decent amount of points this year. So if you need a kicker to stream, you could do worse than Chase.
I don't know if we've talked about this on this show or not. I've interviewed a couple different special teams people lately on my other shows, so I'm getting confused. But they were all really emphasizing how what Chase is doing in a void is already amazing. Then you factor in that he has had 3 different holders and 2 different snappers.
That's true.
And they were like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
They're like, I think people take for granted the idea of just the snap, the hold, the kick. And they're like, there's a lot of chemistry there. The way we talk about offensive linemen having that chemistry with each other, that there's a lot of the mental side, and all of a sudden you've got a new holder, and do you trust him? And they're like, so it's even more impressive what Chase has done because of that. And I thought that was pretty cool. All right, so now also we have our off-the-field human interest, which of course this time of year is all about the holiday happiness that we're spreading, the holiday cheer. Man, the Bucs have been everywhere in the community this last week or so doing about 1 million different things. We had Baker and Emily Mayfield hosting a Passing the Joy event, playing games, giving gifts to 100 children and families at the Dream Center of Tampa. It was incredibly cute. There was a little fake snowball fight. I'm like, I would not want to go against a quarterback in that. You're going to lose. You're going to lose. And then Baker introduced that Santa was there. And if you think Baker gets a big reception at places, the screams for Santa were ear-piercing. That Baker was down
Baker,
here.
who cares?
Yeah, who cares about that? We got
I didn't
Santa
know
here.
Baker was friends with Santa.
I know, right? Close personal
Wow.
speed dial, apparently. Just
Nice.
summoned him even at the busiest time of year
Yeah.
when he needed him. And then also the O-line lights up Christmas. I always love this event that they go shopping with a bunch of kids that they surprised 70 foster youth from the Hart Gallery of Tampa with a shopping spree. So if you see, they're all in there, and it was just so cute. There's
incredible.
cheerleaders, there's Captain Fear, and Antoine Winfield, honorary O-line member for the evening, decided to join as well. And also, it's always so adorable to watch them shop for all the kids. And my favorite was watching Cody Mauk end up being paired up with this little girl who wanted nothing but Barbie things. And his entire basket was just pink. It was not a single thing in there that wasn't Barbie.
That's
and
funny.
it's just really adorable watching them all be so great with the kids and have such a good time.
Correct me if I'm. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, Luke Gedeke was made for events like that. So he took a little boy to like the bench press and was going through protein powders with this little boy and was like, this one's really good for digestion. This one's good for this one. Like you're going to be benching 120 in no time. And this little boy's like, oh,
Yeah,
okay.
totally.
Luke's
totally.
like, oh, this is on clearance. It's a must.
He's creating a new Luke the Lifter.
Correct me if I'm
Yeah.
wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't the kids when they're shopping encouraged to also get gifts for their siblings? And
Well, basically, yeah, they're just given a certain amount of money and told they can do with it whatever they want. But what is so cute is how often the kids choose to want to do that too. That they'll say, oh, I want to get things for my mom or for my sister or whatever. And it's very, very sweet all the way around. Lots of good vibes and good feels. So I love that even busy time of year, players are taking time to do some holiday cheer for everyone. So we love that. So let's dive into our next game here. We have our game against the Cowboys, Sunday Night Football. There are just so many interesting things about this game to me. And it reminds me so much in some ways of this Raiders game lately, where you had like amazing offensive weapon, star pass rusher.
That's true. Yeah.
And this Micah Parsons, like, holy moly, this guy has been such a game wrecker from day one. But I feel like this is a guy where you get nervous to play him. I feel pretty, fair, which is fair.
I mean, this highlight package.
This highlight
made me kinda
package
nervous.
is supporting that. But he's had 8.5 sacks in 10 games played this year, which is not too shabby. Just had 2 sacks and 8 quarterback pressures against Carolina. But if you think about some of the edge rushers we've played recently, because that's what got me thinking about it, of like, oh, I feel like I just talked about Max Crosby in the same way recently.
Right.
And he was, I'm not going to say a non-factor, but he did not wreck the game like we know he's capable of. I mean, Max Crosby, 2 tackles, 0 sacks. I started looking at some of the other edge rushers we've gone against that are considered really elite. You have Joey Bosa, who had 2 tackles, 0 sacks. Khalil Mack, 1 tackle, 0 sacks. Brian Burns, 3 tackles, 0 sacks. Nick Bosa, we gave up 1 sack to, but then Leonard Floyd, 1 tackle, 0 sacks. And we know that, of course, Aiden Hutchinson, that didn't go as well, but that also was Justin School getting thrown in there kind of at the last minute, and Aiden Hutchinson is wild. But as you look at these names and you look at these stats, and we've talked so much about how our O-line is playing at such a high level, Luke Gedeke, Tristan Wirfs, both just absolutely killing it, that I am not as nervous as I would normally be when you're hearing, 8.5 sacks in 10 games. I just feel like our line is playing so well against these elite pass rushers. I mean, even some of the elite interior guys like a Dexter Lawrence, people that, they've really not just gotten blown up by a lot of people you would have expected. So I think it's still going to be a really fun battle to watch.
So just to be clear, you are acknowledging that Micah Parsons is a game record
Phenomenal
type of
player, yes. No bulletin board material here to be given out. Phenomenal player. I just really love how our O-line is
Yeah,
playing.
you're just giving some love to Tristan and Luke.
Yeah.
And I feel like the athleticism of Tristan and Luke is certainly going to come into play against a guy like Micah Parsons, because like the speed, the initial quickness off the line is kind of what makes him so disruptive. And I remember like his first year under Dan Quinn, there was a lot of talk about like even comparisons of him to Lawrence Taylor, who is of course one of like the greatest defenders of all time. But it was, linemen essentially were having to change their stance because they couldn't get out of it quick enough before he was already there. And Micah has such quickness off the line, but I think the athleticism of our bookends is going to be a great matchup, but I would want them to be the group that's going against.
Micah's had 3 full seasons and has been in the top 3 in Defensive Player of the Year voting each time. So, and since he came back from the injury that cost him 4 games, I think he said, he has a league-leading 41 quarterback pressures.
Jeez. Yep.
But we have the guys to counter.
Yeah. We got a good offensive
Tristan
line.
Luke.
So let's talk about, as I mentioned, there's also definitely some offensive weapons on the other side. CeeDee Lamb, the main one, but also they've had a surprise guy be really leading a lot of the efforts on their offense as well this year. So what are the weapons that we're going to have to keep an eye on?
So CeeDee is definitely their most potent offensive weapon. He had 116 yards against the Panthers last week. In his receptions and receiving yards, ranked third in the NFL. But he lines up in the slot. He can line up out wide. He's kind of that yak artist, and he's able to kind of adjust the tempo of routes, but he also can adjust to the ball downfield, make those kind of contorted catches. So he's definitely their bell cow and kind of the number one guy that Cooper Rush is going to target. But also Rico Dowdle. He's had his third straight game of over 100 rushing yards against the Panthers, and has the vision, the burst, and is kind of quick to go from reactive to finishing. So obviously the run defense for us, I think teams have kind of tried to go away from Vita Vea and Clyde Ducansey. So I feel like this might be big for the edge rushers to kind of try and corral him on Sunday.
And then speaking of the rush versus the defense, so we've seen the Bucs run game this year. It's just been incredible to watch, and we know that that's something they're going to really want to rely on a ton, that they've shown they want to run the ball, they want to do it often, they want to do it well. How likely is it that that's going to be able to work this week against the Cowboys defense?
Well, who were you just talking about a couple minutes ago? Micah Parsons?
Micah Parsons, yeah.
What would be the best way to keep Micah Parsons away from Baker Mayfield?
Yeah, getting the ball away from Baker Mayfield.
Just don't let Baker have the ball as off. Obviously, I'm joking, but get the running game going, and that's a great way to neutralize a great pass rush. And the Buccaneers have topped 150 rushing yards in each of their last 4 games, which is the longest streak in Buccaneers history. I mean, we were hopeful that the running game would be better this year, but it's incredible that it went from finishing dead last in both yards per game and yards per carry each of the last 2 years, and now the Buccaneers have a top 5 running game. They're second in the league in yards per carry. And it's just, as it continues to work, I think Liam Cohen just keeps leaning into it more than ever, and of course he should. And in this game, they're facing a Dallas defense that is ranked 29th against the run. So, it doesn't take a genius to say the Buccaneers' game plan is probably going to be a lot of running as long as it's working, and there's a good chance that it will be working because in addition to how well Luke and Tristan have kept those great pass rushers off Baker, the run blocking has been phenomenal. And I think a lot of it has to do with scheme, right? I think we've seen Liam Cohen's scheme really take advantage of what these guys can do. So I would suspect you're going to see a lot of emphasis on the run game.
Yeah, and to speak about Liam's scheme, when you have your quarterback, a wide receiver, and a running back recently, all getting player of the week types of awards,
right?
That's wild. Because you had Bucky recently, you've had Sean Tucker, you've had Mike, you've had how balanced is that showing that we can be when it's not just Mike getting it over and over again, or it's not that's the dream, right? Is to have your big playmakers for both running back and wide receiver. It's impressive.
Just think if Chris Godwin was in that mix.
Oh. It's so true.
Might be the best offense in the league.
It's wild to think about. All right, so now it's time for our answer to the trivia.
Are you going to make any guesses here?
I can guess
this
a whole bunch of people.
This was 3 years ago.
Right. No. Okay, so first of all, I would like to clarify: is this the game that Chris Godwin got hurt in?
No, Chris Godwin got hurt against the Saints.
The Saints, okay.
And this was the first game of the season.
Right. Okay. Because he was going to be my guess, and then I got nervous.
Is that your guess?
Sure.
Good job.
Yes. Let's go. I got a trivia question. It's a great day. It's a great day, everybody.
I'm glad because
Casey.
I had some good options. There was a big work done play against the Cowboys in a win back in 2000, and a week 1 win where we shut them out. There's lots of opportunities to make trivia questions about the Bucs and the Cowboys, but I purposely went in this era to give you a chance, and you nailed it. I'm happy. I'm impressed.
That was a lot of pressure.
I think I'm having trouble. Okay. The complete answer is Tom Brady's 24-yard pass to Chris Godwin with 18 seconds left completed a 57-yard game-winning drive in the final 124 of the game, and that was the kickoff game. The defending champs always get the kickoff game on Thursday night, and so it was here against Dallas. It was a primetime game, and Dallas was really good that year, and they had scored, and then it was one of those games where you realize you have Tom Brady. Yeah. And you're like, okay, we've got a minute and a half left, and we need a field goal. feel pretty good about
Yeah.
this.
Yep. Yeah.
And he delivered.
And I love that I feel like that now, too, about the team.
I know, right?
Isn't that great? That I think that people might have wondered, is that going to last post Tom Brady? Are you still going to have that feeling of, oh, yeah, minute and a half left, we got this? And I feel that way now.
You know, that makes me think of something I was talking with the communications guys were looking up a note yesterday because the Bucs are trying to win their 4th straight division title. How many teams have won 4 straight division titles with multiple quarterbacks and multiple head coaches? And it's a pretty rare occurrence.
And
It's
multiple
happened.
coordinators and multiple all the things.
Oh, yeah, that too.
That's wild.
That sustained success with that kind of turnover is rare. I think it's happened 3 other times.
That's really impressive. All right.
I mean, we haven't done it yet.
Yes.
You should say we don't have a 4th division title yet.
Yep, we're all good. But if
We're manifesting.
theoretically
It would
to
be
happen,
impressive.
it would be amazing. All right, that's going to do it for us in this edition of Bucs Insider. Thanks so much for joining us, and we hope you have a lovely holiday week as well. We'll see you next time.